Okay, so why do some athletes that are absolutely jacked, super strong, not perform in their actual sport at that same level? I'll cover all of that and more in today's episode of 50 Days to Rebuild, the series where I do 50 minutes of exercise and read 50 pages of a physio book in an attempt to rehab myself. This is day 29. The heart of the issue here is that you get strong, you get proficient wherever you train. Right, so if we look at like the force velocity curve, so if we train really quick, we need sort of like a lower weight to do so. If we then need to do an explosive sport, we need to be training in that area. But so many people spend their time moving very slow at the other end of the curve, right? They're moving really big weight really slowly, but they have an explosive sport. What's more is that strength training is posture and muscle length specific. So if you're training seated or laying down for something like a bench press, how is that translating to your sport? You're getting stronger in this pressing motion, but like with this crazy arch and laying down with this planted feet, not in any way that sort of translates to your sport. That's why someone like McGill sort of argued for like a single arm cable press in standing. It's like that's way more similar to what someone would be doing normally in a sport. Now, because all of this is specific, there's a bunch of different training mechanisms that the authors of the book, The Science and Practice of Strength Training by Zatsiorsky that I'm reading, have recommended or sort of outline. So one of these is the peak contraction method. So this is basically making it so that you adjust an exercise so that the weakest joint angle is where the strongest contraction happens, right? Basically, we're just trying to get strong at the weakest link. What the author said here is it does increase strength, but it does also have a low transfer to actual sporting activities. Another type is accommodating resistance, which is trying to maximize the tension through the whole range of motion. Like for example, if you're doing like a bicep curl at the very top, you're not really getting much work. Yes, you can squeeze it, but it's not as demanding as when you have like a 90-degree situation with your arm. So they're trying to increase that, but again, they're saying there's not really much evidence that this is very effective. But at least in my head, I can see how it would increase strength. Then there's this technique called accentuation, and this seems very interesting. Basically, they're saying only train the range of motion you need for your sport. This again aligns with what Dr. Stuart McGill would say, which is like don't stretch past the range that you need for a sport. Similar idea, right? So if you only need 30 degrees of hip extension, let's train that. So very intriguing. It seems like we're getting way more sport specific if we're doing something like this. But then I guess the question becomes, like, how can you train something super sport specific with, I guess, enough load? And this is where we start tying in speed resisted training. So for example, if you're doing running like sprints, they'd put ankle weights on. So we're trying to get weight to move in the same direction that we would be moving, but it can be cumbersome. So there's like a limitation to this approach because you can't put the type of weights or enough weight on that it's going to start impeding mechanics of the actual movement. So, you start running really wide. It's not representing what you actually do. That would be bad. So it's limited likely in weight and the type of weights that you can use. But ultimately seems like a good approach. Now on this idea of specificity, this was really surprising to me. And I guess disappointing that I didn't really want to hear it, but I think it's important. And what the authors are saying here is that strength training impedes endurance. The reason for this is that there's a reduced capillary density. But on the flip side, they said that endurance doesn't tend to impede strength much. As a result of this, they're sort of recommending like train strength for like some sort of cycle, and then after that do like an endurance cycle. The last sort of thing here on the specificity is training explosively. So again, I sort of touched on this at the start, that if you have a sport, like most sports that require explosive action, we really need to train that. So it's like train plyometrics, don't just train these heavy, slow movements. So they would call that like a reversible action. It's just plyometrics basically. And that's something that we want to do. Now, how do you actually go about doing that? What they recommended here is that the weights you should be using should be about 30 to 45% of your 1 rep maximum. Again, because if you look at that force curve, if we max the weight, we cannot move it quickly. and also it's going to be essentially more dangerous at that point. Okay, and what if we get to some sort of plateau? Basically what they're saying here is if we've plateaued with explosive strength, we need to look at either our max lift or increasing that explosiveness, that rate of force production. If we have sort of an explosive weight that we can move that's sort of getting close to our 1 rep maximum, like a decent ratio, we need to increase our 1 rep maximum. So look at normal strength. But if our 1 rep maximum is really far from our explosive ability, just work on that force production rate. And that sort of covers what I learned for today. Looking at the exercise portion of things with the bird dog first, I did have some hyperextension in my low back still, which is really frustrating me. I was able to sort of address this by regressing to exclusively moving my leg or exclusively moving my arm and really focusing through it. It still doesn't feel as good, like I'm not getting that same sort of contraction, but I guess it's moving in the right direction. And then looking at the hinge, this is again kind of frustrating. I'm over supinating, I'm collapsing into my lateral foot. It's like I can't maintain that posterior chain activation because my base isn't there. So I really got to figure out how to fix that. And yeah, that's about it for day 29. Thanks for watching and I hope you have a good one. Cheers.